A few hours ago, Trump said something on Truth Social. Do you want to read it?
It says here, despite their protests and false statements to the contrary, combined with the fake news drumbeats, which are doing everything they can to make the US victory look like as small, insignificant as possible, Iran has fully and completely agreed to the highest level of nuclear inspections for a long time, infinitely, and he says infinitely in future. This will ensure nuclear honesty. If they do not agree to this, there will be no further negotiations. Based on the major concessions that Iran is making, I have agreed to allow the Strait of Hormuz to remain open without further blockade. However, all ships will remain in place should the blockade need to be reinstated, which seems at this point highly unlikely. The money and or sanctions that the US Treasury releases go into a trust controlled by the United States and will be used to purchase food and medical supplies exclusively from the United States, including corn, wheat, soybeans from our wonderful American farmers. These are things that Iran needs desperately. This is humanitarian crisis, and I feel it is important to help now before it is too late. Talks are progressing well. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump.
Okay, so let's break it down. He wants to ensure nuclear honesty. Is there such a thing as a nuclear honesty?
We know the answer to that is a definite and absolute no. It's actually laughable. We're almost back to pre-JCPOA, like 1.0, meaning the talks that were surrounding at the time in the JCPOA about whether Obama could get the Iranians to agree to have the IAEA inspectors come in at their discretion, meaning IAEA inspectors would choose the locations, would choose the timing. It'd be completely up to the IAEA. And what Trump is suggesting is that he managed to get this right, whereas the original JCPOA, the Iranians basically shut that down and said that they needed a 30-day notice period of when inspections would take place. The Iranians would even stipulate where the inspections would take place and in which facility and how much of those facilities. The fact that Trump is saying they've agreed to full nuclear inspections, it's a very empty statement. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, he says Iran has fully and completely agreed to the highest level of nuclear inspections for the long future. When was the last time I've heard this? Trump said if they do not agree to this, there will be no further negotiations, exclamation marks. Do you know how many times he said that they really want this, they want it badly? We've counted, last week it was 39 to 40 times. I don't believe this. I don't agree because it will never happen. Iran, he was saying that Iran needs it desperately. Things like a humanitarian aid, soybeans, wheat. This is not the case. They need money to buy missiles, put it in a nice way, to destroy Israel and destroy America. That's the thing. Trump made a deal with the enemy who wants to destroy America. And if I understand correctly, Pakistan, we just read somewhere from an agency in Pakistan that Pakistan is no longer having to be the mediator, but Qatar. Again, the same country who is in the United States for years now, destroying the generation, basically. The university generation is, sorry to say, fucked up completely. It's gone. Marco Rubio, I'm just reading about Marco. He said, quote, "It's impossible to end the war if Iranian proxies continue to launch missiles. The Lebanon file is separate from the Iranian file." What's your take?
Let's go back a little bit to what you were saying first, and that's humanitarian aid. So as far as I remember, and if we try to sort of straighten out the story or the narrative, did Iran not have a humanitarian crisis even before the war began? In the sense that their currency was already through the floor. They already mistreated the people in Iran. And I make no distinction about the average Iranians because, sure, maybe Iranians outside in the diaspora are calling for change, but there's no movement within Iran. You know, I don't see this. Maybe there might be 2% or less that maybe want a real change. But when you look at Iran, everything is about death to America, death to Israel. and they don't want the change. They were offered the opportunity in the 12-day war when Israel and America initially bombed, and they were called upon to do many, many things, and they didn't. And then in this war, they said, look, if you only just remove the regime, then we will go and we'll finish the job. And look at what happened. The US and Israel and the United States basically absolutely wiped out up to, I think, 3 or 4 layers maybe of the regime, and they didn't do anything. So humanitarian aid, I found that very difficult to believe, because they had these problems before. And this is why the Iranians, I believe, came out into the streets originally, because they didn't have water. I don't think that they wanted regime change, so to say, but they definitely wanted to be able to turn the tap and see water coming out. And they knew that because the currency was through the floor, bread, a loaf of bread or a pita or whatever they buy there was sort of astronomically expensive. So that's the first part. And then the second part, you asked me my take on whether Marco Rubio's statement is true. Yes, I believe that Marco Rubio is saying the right things about keeping the issues separate, keeping the Lebanon and Iranian files separate from each other, meaning Israel needs to basically deal with Hezbollah, and they do, because Hezbollah poses a significant threat to Israel, and because it's on that northern border there with Syria, you never want a situation where that front becomes a single front, meaning Syria and Lebanon. And you have Turkey behind that too. So it should be kept separate. However, and this is where my personal opinion comes into it, in reality, you want the file to be separate so that you can deal with the Hezbollah. But I feel that the file should be, while it's seen as separate, the proxy itself should not be kept separate from Iran. And the reason why I say that is because Hezbollah is so important to Iran. Iran spent 40 years building the Hezbollah, and they pumped millions and millions of dollars into forming Hezbollah as a front for itself against Israel. So when Israel basically starts removing the Hezbollah, this is a direct impact on Iran and Iran's ability to project power and to project sort of terrorism directly at Israel. So it's a difficult one, because you want it to be separate so that you have the freedom to not tie up the negotiations or have Iran be able to sort of stifle the negotiations by saying Israel is not withdrawing from Lebanon, and they don't need to be honest, because they're busy dealing with a terrorist threat there. But Iran will use that to drive the wedge. I'm sorry. So
you're saying smart things. Iran, according to what their representative in the UN says, because it should be separate, but here, according to his words, it's not separate. It's not. He said, quote, "We will respond if Israel violates the memorandum of understanding in any way, including attacking Lebanon or Hezbollah." Now you have to understand this. Hezbollah is Iran, Iran is Hezbollah. It's the same thing. The minute that we found a lot of tunnels in Lebanon, that was the minute that all of a sudden the Iranians started, let's have a talk, let's have a talk. So if their representative saying this, that if we violate it, including Lebanon, including Hezbollah, that means that it's not separate. They're all the same. Let me tell you, it's not going to work, because we've seen this story crap for many, many years. Today, they started another round in Washington between Lebanon and Israel. It won't last. Nothing of it is going to last. Because you don't have a deal with terrorists. Just don't do it. Just basically delaying the end. That's what President Trump has done.
I think he sold them a lie, if I have to be honest. Maybe for the benefit of the listeners, if I can just point out that Israel found in a facility in Lebanon, in Majd al-Jun, which was 10 kilometers from the Israeli border, They found an underground drone manufacturing facility. And when the IDF went in there, they found Iranian drone parts, 50 Iranian drones, you know, with launch shafts and everything like this that was going to be used. So Iran is the Hezbollah and the Hezbollah is Iran. The Muslims or the Islam, according to the Quran, are not allowed to basically make deals with infidels. So you have this dual-edged sword or double-edged sword where the West is not supposed to negotiate with terrorism and the terrorists are not allowed to make deals with the infidels. So where does that leave you? That leaves you with nothing, no deal, which is exactly what happened with the JCPOA, where the JCPOA was never ratified. Iran never signed, was never a signatory to that document. The P5+1 signed that document, and only they signed it. It was never ever, like I said, it was never ever ratified by the Iranians. And it's going to be the same in this case with the Hezbollah and potentially other fronts basically going to war against Israel. And they will go to war, and then Israel will have to respond. And then Iran will jump in and say, America, you need to curtail your ally. And Trump is the one that is, again, I love Trump. I supported Trump. I believe that he was the best option for the United States, but I do think that what is done here is not acceptable, not only for Israel, but I think that he's not telling the full story, even as far as the deal, this MOU. And also he's mentioning things about oil. For instance, he says oil is tumbling, the price of oil is tumbling. Oil currently stands at roughly $77 a barrel, Brent. And this is still higher than what it was before the war began. So, yes, oil has come down from its height of above $100 a barrel during the strikes, during the kinetic part of the war. But now, during the diplomatic phase of the war, oil still is higher than what it was when we went into this. So, oil is not necessarily really dropping to that extent, but I think Trump, at the end of the day, he has to sell a victory to America and to the Americans. And that comes back to part of what you were saying about his post, you know, where he said it's going to benefit the great American farmers because they're going to be buying corn and soybeans and this type of thing. So that's part of the victory that he can sell. And the Iranians can sell regardless. The Iranians will sell their side of it as basically the mighty United States was not able to successfully deter or to defeat the Iranian and their proxies. So maybe this is the way the deal is being set up intentionally so that both sides can save face and live to fight another day, so to say, but at the expense of Israel. And I know Israel's not going anywhere and they're going to basically thrive and excel, which is what they're doing. But it's very bad to see that the United States would put Israel in this position. And with that, I'll go back to you.
So there is an agency, a Muslim agency, Al Jadid, and their correspondent in Washington is saying that the talks between Israel, as we said, that they're starting another round today, between Israel and Lebanon in Washington will also deal with the return of the remains of the kidnapped navigator Ron Arad in exchange for Lebanese prisoners. Again, we have to do that, but we need Ron Arad. He needs to come back and be buried properly. What can I say? We'll have to wait and see.
You mentioned something that is very difficult for me to touch on because I'm not Israeli, but I do understand how important it is. But I will say this, as an outsider, what it strikes me as is it reminds me of Israel making deals with Hamas or with the Gazans about returning of deceased people, their remains, and having to exchange prisoners. And that's something that I can't say I'm too happy to see, because I don't think that it should be done that way. I don't think that deals should be made because, again, you're promoting we're going back full circle. I mean, this was the whole intention of not allowing this to take place in Gaza again with the kidnappings. And what's happening here is basically promoting again that if you kidnap somebody and they perish, that basically they are murdered during their hostage taking, that then you still negotiate the person's remains for living terrorists. And again, I think that that's disgusting. And I don't know if I can support something like that. Like I said, it's very difficult for me as an outsider. I do understand that it's very, very important to get the person back. That we care about every single person, living or deceased. But to do it at the expense of creating a scenario where you may have more kidnappings in the future because of it, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I can agree to that.
I think if they really want us to be in peace with them, they should release the bones of Ronarad as a gesture. That's it. Because those people, if they're released, the prisoners, they've got blood on their hands. They're murderers, and they need
If you
them.
want to
The
talk about,
Iranians need them to continue killing us. Trump said in the G7 conference something that he shouldn't have not have said. I think it was, you don't reveal your cards. And this is the reason, because he talked about that they are going to be running out of oil in 4 months, I think, something like this.
it was 4 weeks.
So that's the reason that he was discussing about the Strait of Hormuz, everything at the Strait of Hormuz. And he was basically quick to go to this negotiation not out of power, but of necessity. He should have started talking about demanding even. I want to take out their enriched uranium. I want to make sure you don't have any nuclear weapons. Because you cannot keep nuclear weapon for the peace deals. Like he said, like, oh, we're doing this for peace. No peace with nuclear. It's bombing.
There isn't a deal. It's an MOU. It's a memorandum of understanding that kicks off a 60-day technical period, which I believe has commenced, where they're going to put a framework forward for an ultimate deal. So is that deal going to be realized during the Trump administration, or is it going to be passed on to the next incoming administration? And I think that's also critical to understand, because you've got to look at who is the incoming administration or potential incoming administration, and how do they view things. Are they currently making sounds about it now? And you hinted at that, like you've said, Marco Rubio basically stands with Israel. He's supporting Israel's cause in this. He's saying it's a bad arrangement, and let's hope that if he is the one incoming, and I believe he potentially is, I think there's a high likelihood that he will be the next United States president. And if he's talking like this now, let's hope that maybe in some ways it does sort of pass to him, and that it's not wrapped up in this administration, because then maybe you could have somebody potentially dealing with it and saying, this was a bad deal. We don't want to do this. I don't know. I don't know if that's the correct way to see it.
So everything is within 60 days?
Well, I think that they're going to propose the 60 days where they'll put basically, again, it's like you said in one of our previous talks, why do you have to have talks and stopping the fighting? This is the crazy thing, is because America's going to put their terms on the table now in this sort of framework, and Iran will put their terms on the table. And then at the end of 60 days, or close to conclusion of 60 days, then they will see if they can sort of bridge the gap, or if they still remain at a distance from each other, if there's no meeting. And then what? Then we do another 60 days? Look, I think that the Iranians are never going to really sign anything unless they get everything. And at the moment, it looks like they're getting everything.
Even after they get everything, they will not sign. Because next time there won't be any talks. Kevin, how are you?
Good morning, or whatever it is your time, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's evening here. It's 8:30.
You're
right. You're absolutely correct. Because first of all, it's not just they're against Israel, Kevin. They're also against America. If you've noticed, every time they chanted They said death to Israel, death to America. So in their eyes, it's not just Iran, by the way, it's Qatar, Saudis, everybody, all the Muslims, they have to kill us. It's in their
Well,
freaking book. So when they chant, when they walk on our flags, they see Israel as a little Satan, America as the big Satan. And unfortunately, they got to America. They got to America. And as we speak, Vance, I'm reading the news, Vance, Kushner, and Witkoff basically working on normalization between America and US and Iran. And they're working on having a visit, a formal visit that Trump is going to visit to her. What do you say?
I did not hear that. That's shocking to me. I would not want any of them stepping foot on the soil of my country. We already have enough terrorists in the form of the United Nations. Why would I need one more to be stepping foot on our American soil? Just my sentiments, but that's the way I feel.
I understand, but you have to understand, they're already inside. You have more than 50 dormant cells of Muslim Brotherhoods inside America. They're there. They're waiting for a specific date, and for them, everything is symbolic, like 9/11, to have a terror attack, and they will do it. It's inevitable.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. Yes, that I know. I know that a 9/11 style terrorist attack is impending. It is in the works actively, and people that I know who work in those areas of intelligence already have told me that it's just a matter of time. And it's sad to have to say that. And just in my closing is that I always hold in my heart this vengeance towards Iran and Hezbollah. And I said before in your spaces that 143 of my brothers in arms were murdered on the 23rd of October of 1983. And I will carry to my grave every ounce of my energy to avenge their souls. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you very much. I think the people who know the best, the veterans, they know what's going on. They've been there in the Middle East. You heard what Zvi Cheskeli, our wonderful journalist, the one who actually knows Islam. It's been mosques. He knows everything about the Middle East that there is to know. And he said it, and I agree totally. President Trump, which I love very much, don't get me wrong. I was very happy that when he was elected and then re-elected for the second time, he's clueless regarding to Islam. Clueless. If you negotiate with a Muslim country, the first thing you do, you take somebody from your country who knows 100% on Islam, like Bridget Gabriel, or somebody who was an ex-Muslim, Mossad. Ask them, talk to them. And my guess, if you look at the bigger picture, Trump understood that he had a lot to lose. So there are coming elections. Don't forget, Trump said that when he was reelected, the second time he was elected, he said that he is a man of peace. That was a big mistake. You don't say that because you reveal your cards and people use this. So if he's a man of peace, you have to remember, what does he want? You want people to recognize that he has peace deals. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize that he didn't get this time. That's what he wants. He actually preferred listening to Witkoff, Kushner, and Vance over listening to the voice of decency of Marco Rubio and Hexet, and also CIA and the U.S. intelligence. This is not good. The way I see it, like Kevin said, follow the money.
Okay, well, Rubio is going to be a hardliner as far as we're concerned. So we can't wait for him to come into power. Let's do everything and wrap up deals now with this guy, because we need to wait out Rubio for 4 years. And make no mistake about it, these regimes like Iran And the Russians and the Chinese, these people, they have a long game. They play a long game. Whereas the United
They
States,
play a long game if you let them. If you let them. That's what I always said, Justin. The leaders of today forgot how to fight. They forgot how to what's right, what's wrong. It's all about diplomacy. Sometimes you need to leave diplomacy aside, leave other criteria aside, and say, no, this is not okay. We are not going to talk to terrorists. We're not going to force Israel. Like right now, they're talking about it in Washington about this. And my guess, the Lebanese will want back the territory that we took in south of Lebanon.
they shouldn't get it back. They should never get it back. And the people in Gaza should never get theirs, should never get it back. They launched a terror proxy. They launched an arm, a direct connection of Iran. There's no difference. The Hezbollah is Iran. And they launched this sort of maniacal death cult directly into the walls of Israel. And they had a plan exactly like the plan of October the 7th. They were supposed to join, in actual fact. Again, no people know this, but it was supposed to be a combined assault from the south, from the north, from the east. And bearing that in mind, how can anyone realistically or reasonably expect Israel, knowing that that is what the plan was of the people to the north, and then try to tell the northern residents of Israel that, we will withdraw and allow them to come within a kilometer or 2 kilometers from the border from where you live? This is ridiculous. This is totally not acceptable.
We just have to wait and see. Keep praying for Israel. God bless Israel. God bless America.